Hi everyone, America from Bravo Migration, and this video is to discuss the changes that have been announced and implemented for the 482 TSS visa in 2023 and what's happening with this visa now in 2024. So a happy new year to you. I'm recording this in January 2024, and I'm happy to report that a lot has changed when it comes to the 482 TSS visa last year in 2023. And most of the changes, if not all of them, are positive changes. We saw the beginning of these changes in July when the government increased the minimum salary acceptable when there's an application being made for this visa from $53,900 a year to $70,000 a year. So when someone's being sponsored by an Australian employer with the 482 TSS visa, they need a job offer, and that offer cannot be for a salary under $70,000 anymore. So the minimum salary used to be adjusted every financial year, but it hadn't been adjusted since 2013. So 10 years later, we saw a huge jump. But if you looked at how salaries were growing over those 10 years, it's probably not such a big jump. Now, this is great news for employees, obviously, employers not so much, but the skills shortage in Australia is so severe that we didn't see any slowing in employers seeking to sponsor international workers in skilled positions. So we believe this was a good change because then you, the visa applicant, the employee, will get a pay rise. Now, the most important change that happened last year, and the one that was being expected by many people, including us here at Bravo, was the expansion of access to permanent residence that is available to people who are on a 482 visa. So a bit of history for you. The 482 visa replaced a very similar visa that used to exist before that was called 457 sponsorship visa. Now, the 457 visa, if someone was granted this visa, then they had a pathway to apply for permanent residence via the permanent employer nomination visa, subclass 186. And that was regardless of what occupation they had nominated. If your occupation was on the list for the 482 visa, then your occupation was on the same list for the permanent 186 visa. However, in 2018, with the 482 visa replacing the 457 visa, that was restricted to only certain occupations. So the occupations in highest demand in Australia were put on a list called medium and long-term skills shortage list, and visas for people who nominate occupations on those lists are given in the medium-term stream of the 482 visa, and that allows those workers to access a permanent visa later if they meet all the requirements. Obviously, nothing is automatic when it comes to immigration in Australia. There's always an application, there's a lot of requirements, but at least there was an opening for everyone when the 457 visa was in place, and with the 482 that was restricted only to those in the medium-term stream. People who had occupations in another list, the short-term stream, short-term occupation list, and the regional occupation list, could get a sponsorship visa 482 TSS, but were not able to proceed to a permanent employer visa subclass 186. So we had to really look at alternative options for our clients seeking PR, coming from a 482 visa and having an occupation on those lists. Now, in November last year, November 2023, the government finally announced the end of this. And we are now back to how things used to be in 2017 before the 457 visa was replaced with the 482. Now, those different streams of visa are still in place for the TSS 482 visa. So people will get a visa that's valid for 4 years in the medium-term stream and only 2 years in the short-term stream. But now people on the short-term stream and people who have an occupation in the regional occupation list can also progress towards a permanent employer nomination visa 186 if they meet all the other requirements. But before, it was not even an option. This visa wasn't even open to those people. So now, regardless of your occupation, you can have a look at the 186 visa. And if you meet all the requirements, it may be a good option for you. Now, what's even better is that during the 482 years, people who could apply for the permanent 186 employer visa could only do so after having worked in the same position while holding a 482 visa for 3 years. Now that has been reduced to 2 years. So now you only need to hold a 482 and work in the same occupation in Australia for 2 years before you can apply for a permanent employer nomination visa 186 if you meet all the other requirements. So this is also a return to how things used to be when the 457 visa was still in place. And this is a reflection of how the current government, we have a Labour government at the moment, how they think about permanent residence to Australia. I've said this over and over in several videos. The Labour government wants people to have access to permanent residence. If we invite a skilled professional to come to Australia and work here, that person is paying taxes, is contributing to the economy and society, there should be a pathway so that person could apply for a permanent visa. Again, this person's still going to have to be nominated by their employer, meet minimum English language requirements, be of good health and character, but at least there's a pathway. So needless to say, we were super happy with these changes. And we're sure we're going to help a lot of skilled international employers in Australia get their PR this year in 2024. Now, we are seeing all these changes because the government has announced a review of the migration system, meaning the Labour government came into power in 2022 after a number of years where the other party, the coalition, the Liberals, were in power. So what they're doing is pretty much looking at what their opposition did in the past 10 years and saying, this doesn't work very well, we want to do differently. So they're trying to fix the migration system, which is very confusing, convoluted, and it probably wasn't helping the country and the people wanting to come to Australia either. So as part of a set of suggested changes, the government's picking some from the review, and some have been implemented already. Like I said, the increase of the minimum salary and the change for the permanent residence access. So what they're probably going to do is throw everything into the garbage and start again. And they have announced, but not implemented yet, they're going to get the 482 visa and break it into 3 different visas. A specialist skills visa, there's no name or number yet, where if someone is sponsored to come and work in Australia and the proposed salary is $135,000 a year or higher, they'll be streamlined. So the applications will be processed quicker and they will have a clear and faster pathway to a permanent visa later. So the government believes that if you're being offered a salary that this high, you are a specialist skilled worker, and we should be facilitating your entry into the country and making things easier for you. Now, the second stream or pathway would be the same one for what we have with the 482 visa now. They're going to call it essential skills pathway, where someone's being sponsored for a job where they're earning between $70,000 and $135,000 a year. And that's pretty much going to remain what we know of as the 482 TSS visa today. And they're creating a third pathway for people earning less than $70,000, and they're calling it core skills. So not all occupations can be sponsored. They're not part of the program. So for example, aged care workers need a labor agreement, childcare workers, and so on. So we're guessing those occupations will be part of this visa. So there'll be 3 different streams. Now, This, according to the action plan published by the department, is only going to be implemented. So it's being announced last year, but it's only going to be implemented in late 2024. Now, late 2024 is anything from September onwards. We don't know when these changes are going to come. So if you are thinking about getting a 482 visa, our advice is to apply now if you can, because you don't want to wait for changes and then apply. You don't know if the changes will affect you positively or negatively. It may be better for you, but what if it isn't? What if you don't qualify anymore? What if the changes make it harder for you to get this visa? It's, you know what the requirements are today. If you qualify, you should apply now. There's no reason to wait. Now, if you already have a 482 TSS visa, those changes will not affect you. So many times in immigration, the government closes applications for a certain visa and creates another type of visa to replace that. But that visa cohort, people holding that visa, are not affected. You will continue to hold a 482 TSS as you have now, so nothing to worry for you. Now, in terms of permanent residence, we believe that those 3 new pathways, all 3 of them would lead to a permanent employer visa somehow. The government, as I said, just changed and expanded the access to permanent employer visas in November last year. So literally 2 months ago, it wouldn't make much sense for them to change this again and restrict access after having implemented a change. But having said that, we need to wait for the legislation to be implemented so we can really advise you in terms of what the requirements will be for the new 3 visas that they're going to replace the 482 TSS visa with, and the access to PR. But the changes are positive, and we know the current government understands there's a skills recession in Australia, and that it is impossible for the country to, for the economy and employers to operate without international skilled workers. So if you're in Australia, get in touch with us here at Bravo Migration. If you have a job offer in your field and your field's a skilled field, then we can book a free discovery phone call with one of our agents so you can find out more about this visa and find out if you qualify. If you already have a 482 TSS visa and you want to find out about your chances to get PR, do the same as well. We can also book the discovery call for you and hopefully help you realize your permanent residence dreams in Australia in 2024. Our word of the year here at Bravo Migration for 2024 is connection, and we really want to connect with you and understand what your goals are in relation to a visa to Australia and obviously help you get there. Thanks for watching, and until our next video, bye.